Hello, and we are KD and Jasmine. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the world of Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense. You'll get a glimpse into the man behind all those, iconic thrillers, from his early days in London to the heights of Hollywood.
What I find so fascinating about Hitchcock is how his personal life, anxieties, and even his quirks often found their way into his films. They shape the themes, the visuals, even his casting choices.
Oh, I'm so curious to see how that plays out. Let's start at the beginning then.
Yeah.
Hitchcock's childhood. He grew up in London's East End, a far cry from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, right?
Right. Picture young Alfred in the early 1900s, living above his family's fish shop in a working-class neighborhood. It was a bustling, sometimes gritty environment.
Not exactly a breeding ground for a world-famous filmmaker. But I guess every story has an unexpected start, huh? Was there anything about his childhood that kind of hints at his future career?
Well, his upbringing was quite strict. His father, a typical Cockney merchant, emphasized discipline and order. And then there was his mother's devout Irish Catholicism, which instilled a strong sense of guilt and anxieties. So you can see this push and pull between order and transgression, a theme that appears in a lot of his films.
That's interesting, that tension between light and darkness playing out in his own childhood. Did this have a direct influence on his filmmaking, would you say?
It's hard to say for certain, but there's a story Hitchcock often told about being locked in a jail cell as a child by his father. It was apparently a punishment for a minor infraction meant to teach him a lesson.
Whoa. Talk about a traumatic experience. I can
Yeah.
see how that would leave a mark on anyone, especially a young child.
Exactly. Hitchcock claimed this instilled in him a lifelong fear of both the police and confinement. Whether the story is completely true or embellished, it points to a deep-seated anxiety that resonates through many of his films.
Now that you mention it, so many of his films deal with wrongful accusations, innocent people trapped, characters battling forces beyond their control. It's like you can trace those themes back to that childhood fear.
Precisely. And it's not just the themes either, but also the visuals. Think about his frequent use of shadows, confined spaces, that feeling of being watched. All of that taps into this primal sense of unease.
It's almost like he's taking those anxieties and putting them on screen for the audience to experience. Makes you wonder if it was cathartic for him in a way.
It's certainly an interesting theory. And speaking of things that captivated a young Hitchcock, he was absolutely fascinated by crime reports in the news of the world. Imagine him poring over these lurid tales of murder and intrigue. Early inspiration, perhaps.
Definitely sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's like he was already drawn to the darker side of human nature, to those stories of transgression and suspense. It's all starting to come together.
You're getting it. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. Hitchcock also had a love for literature and a strong artistic side. He was a fan of authors like Edgar Allan Poe, G.K. Chesterton, and Gustave Flaubert.
I remember reading somewhere that he was particularly drawn to Madame Bovary. What was it about that story that resonated with him?
It's a story of passion, adultery, and ultimately tragedy, an ordinary person caught in extraordinary circumstances. You see this theme emerge again and again in Hitchcock's work.
It's the contrast that makes it so compelling, right?
Yeah.
The seemingly mundane world, suddenly cracking open to reveal the chaos underneath.
Exactly. And this brings us to Hitchcock's entry into filmmaking. How did this London kid with a fascination for the dark and dramatic find his way into the world of cinema?
Yeah, it's not like there was a film school around the corner. What were the key turning points that set him on this path?
Well, it was a combination of ambition, chance, and some good timing. After his father died, young Alfred needed to contribute to the family income. He ended up taking some engineering courses, but his heart wasn't in it. He was a film buff. Remember, this was the early 1900s when cinema was a whole new world of storytelling.
A whole new world unfolding right before his eyes. I can imagine how exciting that must have been.
And fate intervened. He saw an ad for a title card designer at a London studio called Famous Players Lasky. He jumped at the opportunity, his foot in the door to learn the craft from the ground up.
Starting at the bottom, huh? Not afraid of hard work, I guess.
Oh.
What did he do at the studio besides design title cards?
He was like a sponge, soaking up everything about filmmaking. He learned about set design, script writing, even camera techniques, all by observing and assisting the directors. He was driven to master every aspect of the process.
That hunger to learn and grow, to push yourself beyond your comfort zone. That's so inspiring. Those are qualities that can take you far in any field, not just filmmaking.
Absolutely. And for Hitchcock, that meant learning from the best. In the mid-1920s, he was sent to Germany to work on a co-production with UFA, the leading German studio at the time.
Wasn't that the studio known for its really innovative and influential filmmaking style? All that expressionism, distorted sets, and dramatic lighting, that focus on psychological states. Seems like that would have a huge impact on him.
You're right. He was deeply influenced by directors like F.W. Murnau, who made the iconic film The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Hitchcock was fascinated by Murnau's use of visuals to create unease, to create a distorted reality.
So he's absorbing all this new knowledge, experimenting with different techniques, and brewing up his own unique style. What an exciting time for him.
Definitely. And then there's another crucial influence we need to consider, his relationship with Alma Reville.
Ah, Alma. She wasn't just his wife, but also his creative partner, his editor, and his confidant.
Their partnership was remarkable, both personally and professionally. They met at the Islington studio, where Alma was already a seasoned film professional, working as a script girl and editor. In fact, she was even more experienced than Hitchcock at that point.
So he was learning from her too then. It sounds like she played a vital role in his development as a filmmaker.
Absolutely. They married in 1926, and Alma continued to be a major force in his career. She would read his scripts, offer feedback, help with editing, even contribute to the writing.
Wow, a true partnership. It seems like she really helped shape his vision.
There's a story in Spoto's book about their time in Germany during the filming of Hitchcock's first directed film, The Pleasure Garden. They were on a tight budget, and Alma ended up taking on multiple roles: script supervisor, assistant director, even hostess to the demanding Hollywood star Virginia Valley. Talk about wearing many hats.
She sounds incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that Alma's influence on Hitchcock's work can't be overstated. What a dynamic duo they must have been.
Absolutely. She was his sounding board, his trusted collaborator, and her keen mind helped shape the stories and characters that would captivate audiences worldwide. It's really fascinating to trace Hitchcock's journey from those early silent films to his breakout hits. You can see him developing his craft, experimenting with different genres, all while laying the foundation for his signature style.
So let's dive into some of those early works. Were there any films that stand out as particularly Hitchcockian, even in his early years?
Well, The Lodger from 1927 is often considered his first true Hitchcockian thriller. It features a mysterious stranger, a string of murders, and an innocent man caught in a web of suspicion. You can see the themes of mistaken identity and duality taking shape.
So he was already exploring those darker aspects of human nature that would become hallmarks of his later work. What about the visual style of The Lodger? Did it exhibit any of those classic Hitchcockian techniques?
Absolutely. Even in the silent film, you see his mastery of visual storytelling, the use of shadows, expressive close-ups, the way he builds tension through camera angles and editing. It's all there.
It sounds like he had a natural instinct for using the camera to tell a story. Was there a specific film where he really started to experiment with sound in a unique way?
His 1929 film, Blackmail, was groundbreaking. It was one of the first British films to use sound, and Hitchcock, embraced the new technology. But he wasn't content with just using it for dialogue. He experimented with different sound effects, used silence to create tension, and even played with the audience's expectations of what they would hear.
Can you give us an example of how he did that?
Think about that famous scene in the British Museum where the word knife seems to echo in the mind of the guilt-ridden heroine. It's a brilliant use of sound to convey a character's psychological state.
It's like he's using sound to get inside the character's head, to make the audience experience their anxiety and fear firsthand. That's so effective.
Exactly. Hitchcock understood that sound could not only enhance the narrative, but also amplify the emotional impact of a scene.
So throughout the 1930s, Hitchcock directed a string of successful thrillers that really solidified his reputation as a master of suspense. Films like The Man Who Knew Too Much, The 39 Steps, and The Lady Vanishes were big hits. What set these films apart from other thrillers at the time?
You see him refining his craft, perfecting his use of suspense, humor, and those unexpected twists and turns that kept audiences on the edge of their seats.
And his work with actors during this period,
Yeah.
did he already have a reputation for being demanding on set?
He did have a reputation for being, very specific about what he wanted, but he also understood how to draw out those nuanced performances that would bring his characters to life.
It sounds like he was really honing his skills as an auteur, shaping every aspect of his films, from the visuals to the performances.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a pivotal moment in his career. His move to Hollywood in 1939, signing with legendary producer David O. Selznick, was a major turning point. It gave him access to the resources and talent of Hollywood, allowing him to take his filmmaking to the next level.
And his first American film, Rebecca, was a smash hit, even winning the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1940. That's a pretty impressive debut.
Yeah.
What made Rebecca such a success?
It's a masterpiece of Gothic suspense with a haunting atmosphere, memorable characters, and a plot full of twists and turns. It also showcases Hitchcock's ability to adapt his style to the Hollywood system, working within the studio structure while still maintaining his unique vision.
So he was able to navigate the complexities of Hollywood without compromising his artistic integrity. It sounds like he found the perfect balance. What came after Rebecca?
He didn't slow down. He followed it up with a string of successful films throughout the 1940s: Foreign Correspondent, Suspicion, Shadow of a Doubt, and Notorious. Each of these films explored different facets of Hitchcock's recurring themes in interesting ways.
I'm particularly intrigued by Shadow of a Doubt. It seems to take those childhood anxieties we talked about earlier and put them right at the center of an American family.
Yes, it brings that darkness into the heart of a seemingly ordinary family.
Wow.
With a charming uncle who harbors a dark secret.
And visually, he was always pushing boundaries. The long takes in Rope, the dream sequence designed by Salvador Dali in Spellbound, the use of forced perspective to create a sense of vertigo in Vertigo. It's mind-blowing.
He was always pushing the boundaries of what was possible on screen, experimenting with new techniques to make his stories more emotionally impactful.
It sounds like he wasn't satisfied with just telling a story. He wanted the audience to feel it, to be completely immersed in the experience.
Exactly, and he did it with incredible precision and control. Every camera angle, every edit, every sound effect, all carefully calculated to manipulate the audience's emotions and draw them deeper into the world of the film.
And then came the 1950s, the decade where Hitchcock reached the pinnacle of his success. This is the decade of Strangers on a Train, Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, The Wrong Man, Vertigo, and North by Northwest, a string of masterpieces that really showcased him at his best.
It's an incredible run of films, each one a classic in its own right.
And of course, we can't forget Psycho, released in 1960, a film that shocked audiences, pushed the boundaries of cinematic violence, and changed the horror genre forever.
Psycho was a game changer for Hitchcock and for cinema as a whole. It showed his willingness to take risks, to defy expectations, and to explore the darkest corners of the human psyche.
It's amazing to think about the impact of Psycho. It's one of those films that people are still talking about and debating decades later.
It's a testament to Hitchcock's enduring power as a filmmaker, his ability to tap into our deepest fears, the anxieties that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. That's what makes this film so timeless and relevant.
We've talked about Hitchcock's early work and his incredible run of films in the 40s and 50s, but his career didn't stop there. He continued making films throughout the 60s and into the 70s, a time when cinema was going through some major changes. How did he adapt to those changes, and did his style evolve at all?
Hitchcock's later films offer a fascinating glimpse into how he responded to the shifting landscape of cinema while staying true to his core themes.
So let's talk about The Birds, released in 1963. It's such a visually striking film. Those terrifying bird attacks and that unsettling sense of nature turning against us. It feels different from his earlier work, more overtly horrific. Would you agree?
The Birds was a departure for Hitchcock in many ways. It was his first foray into natural horror, and he relied heavily on special effects to create those unforgettable bird attack sequences.
You know, I remember reading about his insistence on using real birds as much as possible. What a logistical nightmare that must have been.
It was, but Hitchcock was determined to achieve a level of realism that hadn't been seen before. He worked with trainers, used mechanical birds, even attached live birds to the actors' clothing to get the effect he wanted.
Wow. Talk about dedication to his craft. Those scenes with Tippi Hedren, the film's star, enduring those attacks, they're both terrifying and awe-inspiring.
There's been a lot of discussion about Hitchcock's treatment of Hedren during the filming of The Birds. Some argue that he pushed her too far, putting her in real danger.
Yeah, it's a complex and troubling aspect of his legacy that we can't ignore. It seems his relationship with Hedren continued to deteriorate during the filming of his next film, Marnie.
Yes, unfortunately, Marnie, released in 1964, is another fascinating film that delves into the complexities of a woman with a troubled past. It explores themes of trauma, obsession, and repression. It's visually stunning, but also quite disturbing in its depiction of violence and manipulation.
It's a reminder that Hitchcock, despite his genius, was a flawed individual, capable of both great kindness and cruelty, and his relationships with his actresses were often intense and complicated.
It's important to acknowledge these darker aspects of his personality while appreciating his artistic achievements.
Absolutely, we can admire his work without condoning his actions. So, how were Hitchcock's films received in the later part of his career?
Well, some critics argued that his later films, like Marnie, relied too heavily on spectacle, sacrificing character development for shock value.
It seems there was a shift in tone and style. They became more experimental, visually driven, and perhaps darker. Did he continue making films after Marnie?
He did. Throughout the late 60s and into the 70s, he made films like Torn Curtain, Topaz, and Frenzy. These films may not have reached the same heights as his earlier masterpieces, but they all bear his unmistakable style.
His penultimate film, Frenzy, released in 1972, is a particularly brutal and an unsettling thriller.
Frenzy features a graphic strangulation scene that shocked audiences at the time. It's as if he was pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable, even as he was entering his 70s.
Maybe he was trying to stay relevant in a changing film world, or maybe he was grappling with his own mortality. Those themes of aging and loss do seem to surface in his later work.
It's an interesting thought. His final film, Family Plot, released in 1976, was a return to a lighter tone, a comedic thriller that some saw as a fitting farewell to his long career.
Family Plot is an enjoyable film, but watching it, knowing it was his last, you can't help but feel a sense of melancholy. What a legacy he left behind.
Hitchcock was a cinematic genius, a master of suspense, and a visual storyteller who left an indelible mark on film history. But he was also a flawed individual, capable of darkness and cruelty.
It's a complex legacy, one that continues to fascinate and disturb us. His films prompt discussions and debates about their themes, their techniques, and the man who made them.
And that's what makes him so compelling. His films weren't just entertainment. They were provocations, challenges to our sensibilities. He invited us to explore the darkest corners of our own minds.
Wow, what a journey this has been. We've covered so much ground, but I have a feeling this is just the start of your your exploration of Hitchcock's work.
He's one of those filmmakers you can revisit again and again, discovering new layers of meaning and brilliance each time.
Maybe you'll even start to see the world a little differently, noticing those shadows, those moments of suspense, those hints of darkness hiding beneath the surface of everyday life.
As Hitchcock once said, always make the audience suffer as much as possible.
I think he meant that in the best way possible, of course. He wanted his audiences to truly feel, to experience the full spectrum of human emotions, even the uncomfortable ones.
And that's the mark of a true artist, isn't it? To make us think, to make us feel, to challenge our perceptions and leave us wanting more.
So dive deep, everyone.
Happy listening.
And we'll catch you next time.
See ya!